Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle once again with another episode of Hillsborough and Hunterdon Real. Today, I have my longtime friend and a very inspirational story, Chris Reilly. So, Chris is, before we get into it, his family is from Hillsborough. Real good people in the community, and I've gotten to see Chris. And you started training when you were in. I don't remember what year in college, but you were at Johns Hopkins. Do you remember what year it was?
I believe it was freshman year. Yeah, freshman year. Yeah.
You're talking like 2013, 14, somewhere.
Yeah, so I graduated from Hillsborough High School in 2010. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so I've known you for quite some time.
10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I remember in high school I'd be working out at the gym with McFarland and those guys, and then my dad was like, "Oh, you got to try out Newell strength. The guy kicks my butt every week." And uh and I mentioned you to McFarland. He's like, "Oh, I know Kyle," and blah, blah, blah. So then, I'd started going to you, and things were changed in my head in terms of how much I can push myself in a
Yeah.
workout.
Yeah. So I think you're still up on the record board,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about, you know, let's go back to those high school days. And so talk about kind of growing up through high school. You were a big baseball player. What else? Did you play other sports?
Yeah, so in high school I played baseball, basketball, and football. Um, I was kind of faced with a decision, I think my sophomore year, and my coach, Norm Hewitt at the time, he kind of talked to me. He was like, "Look, like, you're a really good pitcher. I could see you having a future in baseball." He's like, "You got to make a choice. You want to stick with all three sports? You want to stick with two? You want to just stick with baseball and focus on that?" Because he's like, I think you'd be able to play in college. Um, and that was a big decision I had to make. And I made it probably, I think at the end of my sophomore year. I was like, all right, I'm just going to focus on baseball because junior year is so important for college recruiting and everything. Um, and that was a long conversation I had with my dad too about giving up these other sports because once you're out of high school, you're not playing three sports anymore unless you're like Bo Jackson or something.
Yeah.
But that was a big decision, but I'm glad I made it because then obviously I went to play in college, which was an awesome experience.
So you put all the eggs into the baseball basket.
Mhm.
And when you were deciding where to go, so ultimately we said, right, you went to Johns Hopkins, which is a
Mhm.
fantastic academic school and baseball school.
Mhm.
What did you know what you wanted to study? Like, was that a influence as far as what school you chose?
Yeah. So my junior year, I spent a lot of time looking at different colleges, and I went to Hopkins just to check it out. And I was like, wow, this campus is amazing. The baseball field is amazing. And I actually was able to go into the coach's office and chat with him for a little bit. And I emailed him before that I was going to come through, and he's like, "Oh yeah, send me some tape. Like, we'll go through it." And I spent some time making like pitching demo tapes and stuff like that. And my coach, actually, Norm Hewitt, talked to him for like an hour and a half on the phone, just like vouching for me. And that was when he was like, I think, we'd love to have you on the team. We'd love to have you be a part of the program. If you apply early decision, you'll have a really good chance of getting in. And at that time, I was already pretty focused on academics. It's like National Honor Society and a few AP classes. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do my junior year. But then actually through my dad's business, I met an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Smyers, at Princeton Bone and Joint,
Mhm.
and he let me shadow him for a day in the OR, and then I go to his office and see the patients there. And this was like one of the coolest experiences I had in high school because this like opened my eyes, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy that he's doing all this on the operating table. Like, it was orthopedic surgery, like, joint replacement stuff is very, very like shocking the first time you see it. Cause it's like, you think it's very intricate. It is, like, the angles and everything needs to be perfect, but like, they got bone, hammers out. Like, it was kind of crazy. And that was a very cool experience. And that was like my first experience with medicine. And I was like, maybe I should be pre-med now. And then I got accepted to Hopkins, and that like kind of affirmed it, because they have an amazing pre-med program. Um, and yeah, that was the beginning of my pursuit of medicine, which now it's been like 10 years.
I remember, man. It's been a
Yeah.
long time, man. It's cool
Yeah.
to see, watch it unfold and all that, man. I remember talking with you about it way back in the day.
Yeah.
So how did you? What was your mindset? So now you're at Hopkins,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys are on a national title contender team,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to manage your workload with pre med and all that. What was that like? Like, how did you balance everything?
It was really hard. And, my confidence coming out of high school, I was like, I'm smart, I'm capable, I can do this. Like, I'm a good pitcher, blah, blah, blah. And I show up to Hopkins, and my first like week in fall ball, I'm playing with like grown men. And, I was a high school. I was intimidated, I was used to mowing guys down in high school. And then I get there and I'm like, wow, these are some big dudes, like crushing home runs. Um, and that was like a huge wake up call for me. And then on top of that, my pre-med classes, like I was used to killing it in the classroom in high school. And then I get there and it's just like, some of the kids I was going to school with are, like, their biomedical engineer program at Hopkins is like #1 in the world. And those kids were in my like biology classes with me. So they were destroying these exams, and like, there was no curve if they were going to destroy the exams. And I was just like, wow, I can't compete with these kids. And I was kind of psyching myself out. And this was I would say, probably one of my biggest regrets in college was shutting that, like having that mindset and shutting myself down and being like, oh, like just try to get B's, like, it'll be fine. Because you can't compete with these kids, is what my attitude was. And that kind of changed my junior year. It was a little bit too much, but a little bit too much time, obviously, because I had to take a few gap years before going to medical school. Um, but I think that was the hardest part, is making that adjustment and being like, all right, you need to step up to a different level. You need to focus that much more in the library. And then, as you said, balancing baseball with pre-medical, classes was very difficult. And that's also a huge reason why I took a couple gap years after college. I needed to boost my GPA up, and, get a couple more things under my belt besides baseball. And, but, I'll never regret doing baseball. I thought it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It taught me a lot. As you know, it took me 2 years to make the roster, the actual spring roster. And you know how hard I worked for that in the gym, and how much extra effort I put in just to make that and get my own number and all that stuff. And that was really cool. Because freshman year, starting there, I was super intimidated, and it was a huge wake up call. And then sophomore year was like, I worked hard, and then the roster came out and I didn't make it, and I was devastated. And I was like, I have a decision to make. I could, be upset and wallow in self-pity or whatever, but I didn't make that decision. I made the decision to be resilient and bunker down, and work my ass off, and make that roster. And that was my junior year. And unfortunately, I had a devastating injury, that was terrible. That was my junior year. I was supposed to be the closer on the team that year. And that happened, and life happens again. As you know, you've had many injuries.
Mhm.
So that happened. And then, senior season, I had a good season, and, finally that was it. So again, just going back, pre-med and baseball, it was pretty tough to balance, but it taught me a lot in terms of, discipline, being resilient, and realizing you really can do anything you put your mind to. You really can.
Yeah. And that's what you've done. And from knowing you and what you're saying, it was really a shift in your thinking, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was a huge turning point for me. Just having the mindset of knowing that if I work hard enough at something, it'll eventually come to fruition, and you'll eventually see the fruits of your labor, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember we've had a few like mind map sessions, and it all comes down to what your essential motivation is in life. Because as you talked about, you have these outside motivations, and then you slowly work your way in, and then you find what your true like motivation is.
Yeah.
Uh, and it takes a lot of self-reflection and a lot of self-discipline to like actually understand what's going on. So yeah, that was my college experience. um, Not the typical college experience. I kind of wish I had a lot more time to hang out outside of sports and academics, with friends. But I'd say a majority of my friends were baseball players, so I'd spent most of my time with them anyway. Lifelong friends. So
Yeah.
that's always cool.
Yeah. And it's neat to see because you said we were doing mind map stuff. You were interested in that, relatively speaking, at a young age. I mean, I have people that are much older that aren't even thinking about, okay, what's my life's mission? Like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But you kind of knew, hey, I need to figure this out,
Hmm.
so I can figure out what's the next step. So you finished Hopkins. You talked about the gap years. You kind of explained for people that don't know what that is. What is a gap year? Like, and then what was the next step? What was the next part of your path?
Yeah. So a gap year is for people who are pre-medicine, who they want to improve their applications a little bit more. The average age of a first year medical student now is like 26, which is actually kind of crazy because everybody thinks about it like, oh, it's a linear path, right? You go college, then you go to med school, then residency. That's not really the norm anymore, unless you're like a super genius and you're discovering cures for cancer and like, crazy research like that, which
Yeah.
is, it's unrealistic. But there are kids out there who are just like beasts. Um, and those are the kids that go right from college to medical school. So a lot of kids now take a gap year, which is a year to improve their resume, not a year to just like go travel wherever, but it's more of it's supposed to show these people that you're serious about medicine and that this is what you want to do. So my first gap year, I did a master's program, an accelerated master's of science at Drexel in Philly. So I lived in Philly for a year and really loved my time there. I really got to know the city really well. And Drexel, studying there, it was all first year medical school classes. So we would do like, it was like Zoom before Zoom conference. We would be at the hospital and we'd be in this lecture hall and we would Zoom into the medical student lectures like live. And we would take the same tests, quizzes as the med students at Drexel. And this was like a trial run of med school pretty much. And I did well. I was very happy with that experience because it really taught me to study. It taught me how to study. And it taught me that you're not just supposed to be memorizing things. It's supposed to be, you have to have a core understanding of things. Because in medicine, it's all building blocks. You start from cellular biology and you work your way up, all the way up to pathophysiology and all these crazy things. Um, but again, it's not that the information is complex. It's the time it takes to build those building blocks, and it takes a long time. And that's why med school is 4 years. Um, a lot of people, I'll constantly have in the ER now, I'll have like people coming in, oh, I Googled this and I Googled that. And I'm like, relax, like take a step back. It's like, that's why I went to med school. Like, let's just talk about this for a second. Um, so, that year really taught me how to study, like do your practice problems. Just so many practice problems. That's literally it's just like, it turns into like pattern recognition, but that's how you learn on top of these foundations. So Drexel was a great experience. I met some awesome friends there, had some amazing experiences. And that was my first gap year. And during that gap year, I was applying. So my junior year of college, I applied the first time to medical school and got rejected. Didn't get any interviews, whatever. This was the second time I applied. I got like 2 or 3 interviews, and that was it. And I didn't get accepted. And this was after my first gap year, which was a master's program specifically geared toward medicine. And I was like, all right, again, this is a huge turning point. I have a decision to make. Do I just give up and just stop pursuing this lifelong dream that I've had? Or do I keep going for it? Do I keep finding new ways to improve my resume or new angles of how to actually get my MD? And you know what? I decided I'm going to keep going for it. So I got my master's that 1 year. And then I was told by a couple different people, like scribing is a great opportunity for clinical hours. And for anybody who doesn't know what a scribe is, physicians need to write notes on every patient encounter, very detailed notes. Our medical system, not only for like keeping track of patient information, but also like medical legal stuff. We're in such a litigious society now. It's like if you didn't document something, it didn't happen. That's kind of how medicine works now. So that's why when you go to the ER or go to your doctor's office and they're in front of the computer, that's what they're doing. They're trying to chart as much as they possibly can about this encounter so that, you know, if one day this patient says, you know, you did something wrong, they could be like, no, 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 no. I have this in writing. This is what we talked about. This is what we did. And obviously to keep a patient medical record. So what the scribe does is helps out the doctor who's very busy, obviously going from patient to patient. So we'll go into the room with the doc and we'll basically scribe the whole encounter and we'll put it into a medical document form. So I had an amazing opportunity to work at the ER in Trenton, New Jersey. So I saw some really cool stuff over there, some wild stuff, and as well as Hopewell. And this was through Capital Health. And I had a great experience, met a lot of amazing doctors. And that was my first exposure to emergency medicine. And that was like, I was like, wow, like I got to keep going for this. Like this, you know, I feel like all these experiences kind of keep the fire going, you know? So my mom actually told me about this. She was like, hey, I have a friend who knows a doctor who went to a Caribbean medical school and is now an ER doc at Rutgers. I was like, okay, I'd never even thought about Caribbean medical schools. I didn't even know about DO schools either, which I kind of wish I did because it's literally the same thing as an MD, like when it comes to being a doctor. Yeah.
Explain that. What's the DO school?
So DO is osteopathic medicine. It used to be like there's always a stigma behind it because they're like, oh, we're holistic medicine and blah, blah, blah. But it's not like that. They learn all the same things that MDs learn, plus osteopathic manipulation, which is like, it's similar to chiropractic stuff. So they even learn more than we do. And there's always been this stigma against DOs. And some of the best docs that I've ever met have been DOs. And there's like this trend where I've noticed that DOs are much more like socially receptive and like actual like people you can talk to. Like a lot of the MDs that I've met have been like, oh, don't talk to me, or kind of awkward in their conversation. But a lot of the DOs that I've met have been very down to earth people, awesome people in general. And some of the docs I scribed for were DOs, and they were amazing. And the so basically I didn't know anything about DO schools. So thinking back, would I have applied to DO schools? Yeah, I probably would have. But anyway, so my mom's friend's friend, I talked to this guy and he filled me in on St. George's University, which is a Caribbean medical school. And this was during my time scribing. And he's like, hey man, like, it seems like you've been through a lot. It seems like you know how to work hard and you know, like, this is what you want to do if you're still interested. So, you could just go for it. And he explained a lot of it to me. And, thinking back, it is kind of crazy. I put literally all my eggs in one basket and was like, all right, we're doing this. I applied, I got accepted. And I knew nothing about Grenada. I knew nothing about that island. And it's literally above Venezuela. It's super far south. And I just remember leaving and I'm on the plane and I'm like, holy crap. Like this is happening right now. I'm going to like a foreign country to like study medicine. I don't know anything about this place. And it was wild showing up to that island for the first time. But yeah, so anyway, it was during that second gap year that I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm doing a full send. I'm going to Grenada. So yeah, that was pretty incredible.
So when I get a lot of questions about that. So you get down to Grenada, you had a living arrangement set up down there. Like, what's the university like? Is it different? Obviously, it's different than universities up here. Or...
Yeah. So Grenada it's like a second world country, I would say, and the campus is beautiful. Obviously, the island is beautiful in itself. So like when the plane is landing, you're like over like crystal clear blue water. You land. And then when you go in the airport, it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a second world airport. Like at the time, they've made so many improvements over the past like 4 years. It's actually kind of crazy. And I just remember getting into a cab with my stuff and other random students going to the university. And first of all, the cab was like a 1992, like whatever, Dodge something. And the cab driver had like a beer in the cup holder. And I'm like, where am I? And we're driving and guys flying down these roads. And the roads, like the infrastructure is not that great. Like the roads have potholes everywhere and whatever. And I was like, wow, I'm going to die before I even get to campus. So that was like my first exposure to Grenada. And, you roll up to campus. It's beautiful. All like red roofed buildings. Really nice. They've actually, as soon as I left, they just built this like crazy fitness center / study center. It's really nice. It's overlooking the water. So the campus is beautiful. First semester you're there, housing is for students. So, it's mandatory to be in student housing your first semester. So I walked into my apartment, and it's me and two other roommates. My one friend, Will, I'm still friends with him to this day. He's from Texas, really cool kid. This other kid's name is Osama. He's really nice kid, quiet, but it was us three in this tiny apartment. And I walked into my actual room and it was one of the tiniest rooms I've ever seen. And I was like, I called my parents. I'm like, I can't do this. They're like, Chris, just take a deep breath, give it a week, meet some people. Like, you don't start class for another week and a half, whatever. Just calm down. It'll be okay. And they were right. I calmed down and I met some of my best friends ever. And I was down there for 2 years. Just had some of the most amazing times in Grenada. I play music too. I play guitar and sing. And there was a local brewery down there that we would always play at after exams. We'd have like a couple hundred people sometimes in the crowd, which was always really cool. And obviously you go to the beaches after exams. You do such a cool experience. And my biggest thing about Grenada is I tell everybody who goes there, like, don't don't just shut yourself away and study all the time. Don't do that, because you're going to miss out on so many life experiences that will make you love Grenada and want to go back at some point. Because there were so many kids that were miserable. They were like, oh, this place sucks. Like, I just want to go home, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is one of the coolest places ever. Like, get your studying done. You don't need to be in the library for 16 hours in a day, because I know you're not studying for 16 hours, bro. I know you're not. Get your studying done, get your work done, and go do whatever, go explore. Um, and I think no matter where you are in life, life is what you make it. And there's so many of these mental barriers people put up. They're like, oh, I can't do that. Or I can't. How do you have so much free time? How do you do this? How do you balance things? And I'm like, well, you know, you got to have that honest conversation with yourself. And I feel like not a lot of people are very honest with themselves. They kind of just get in this comfortable routine, and they don't really shake things up. Um, so that was like my biggest piece of advice, because on my Instagram page, I get tons of DMs from kids who are interested in St. George's, and they're like, hey, could you tell me about it? And I tell them the same thing, which is, first of all, you go to a Caribbean school, you have to kill it. You have to do really well. And you have to do really well in your board exams, because there's a stigma against Caribbean grads. Um, if you do well on your board exams and you've got good grades, whatever, you'll most likely match into a residency program. If you go there and you mess around and you don't really study, you don't put the work in, you're going to fail out, or you're not going to match. And I try to be very honest with them, because you're your own investment. That's the whole point, right? You're spending a ton of money to do this and to have the chance at an MD, and a chance to become a doctor outside of the traditional path. Um, and I think if students understand that, and understand that they are their own investment, then they should be fine. Um, but again, it's a really tough adjustment to make
Sure.
going down there. Um, so yeah, it was 2 years down there, and then 2 years doing clinical rotations up in America. So I was in Hackensack for a year, Hackensack, New Jersey. Awesome hospital. And had some amazing experiences there. And I was able to visit my family and stuff, which was really nice. Got to see them pretty often. Um, and obviously, throughout all of this, I'm continuing to do Newell strength workouts. I am I am introducing my buddies to the deck of death. All the crazy stuff. Uh, I just remember on the island we had like this tiny gym, and me and my buddies, I'd be like, all right, guys, we're doing a Newell workout today. They're like, no. Like, we got to do it, fellas. We got to do it.
That's
But
awesome, dude.
yeah, so I've introduced some people to the Newell way.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool. I mean, Grenada sounds like it was heaven, man. So when you were down there, did your family come down at all, like, or like take vacation down there?
Yeah, yeah. So they visited a couple times. There's some really cool places there. They actually have a sandals there too. So my parents stayed there one time. Um, and they had one of the best vacations they've ever had in Grenada. They still talk about it. But the coolest thing about that place was knowing that wherever you go into medical school, it's gonna suck. Like, it is. You're gonna be studying all the time. You have to study all the time. If you fall back on reviewing lectures, you're just gonna get more and more lectures on top of that, and then you're just gonna keep falling behind. So you always have to stay on top of your stuff. So if you get your work done, then why shouldn't you be able to enjoy the place that you live? Um, and going to med school in like Minnesota versus Grenada, that's a huge wellness factor for me, is that I know I can go outside and it's going to be 85 and sunny and beautiful all the time. Um, And if I want to go to the beach, I can go to the beach. If I want to go for a run, through the rainforest and go like see some waterfalls or something, I can go do that. Um, if I want to go jam with my buddies at the brewery, I can go jam with my buddies. So it was tough because that I don't want to paint a picture of rainbows and butterflies, but when you got your work done or after exams was always so much fun. We'd have an exam on a Friday, then you get Saturday and Sunday off and you'd be able to do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was quite the experience. That's for sure.
How did with the band? Because I remember you're guitar player. How did you link up with the like? You said we played at the brewery. Did you put the band down there? Like,
yeah. So I had just gotten into playing live music with my buddy Frank Core, who's he's now a teacher up in North Jersey, but he went to Hillsborough High School as well. And we played gigs, whatever. We played in Philly a couple times. We played at like Petrox, all the local Hillsborough spots. And I was super into it. I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. So when I got down to Grenada, I had my guitar and I saw this brewery and I was like, wow, this is a really cool place. It's like indoor, outdoor, very open. And I asked them like, hey, have you guys ever done like live music? And they're these English guys, Mark and Anand. They're super cool. They own the West Indies Brewery Company. It's a beer company. They've just gotten bigger over the years, which is cool. But they were like, no, we've never done it. I was like, would you guys want I can, show you a couple songs real quick and you just judge me and say, if you'd like me to play or not. So I did that and they were like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. So they have like a surround sound system. And I remember my first gig there, was in the corner near the bar. No one even knew I was playing, but you could hear it throughout the bar on the surround sound. And I remember finishing the gig, walking around with my guitar, like to my car. And I saw a couple of my buddies like, hey, were you just playing? I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, dude, it was really good. Like, whatever. And I think I played like one other gig. And I had a friend who was in the vet school down there. And she was like, hey, I have a really good drummer friend who's also a vet down here. You guys should link up. And I was like, okay. She's like, here's his Facebook. And I reached out to this kid and I was like, hey man, like, do you want to jam and come do a gig with me at the brewery? He was like, yeah, sure. I was like, how about next Friday? He's like, yeah, man, sure. So I never met this kid before. He shows up with a djembe and some shakers and like this guy, he's one of my best friends. Love this guy. His name Andrew Kushner. He's out in San Diego. He's actually doing his life story is insane too. This guy. He just finished filming this like vet documentary for Peacock, which is NBC's like streaming service. So he's like a whole nother animal. But so we show up and we're in the corner again. And we've never played before. We played an incredible show. Like we're like just on. Like I don't know, we vibed really well. And after that show, the owners were like, hey, when you guys come back next term, we're gonna have a stage for you here. We're gonna like do all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. And we come back and there's like a stage built. They literally like constructed a stage, like sound system, like lights and stuff. And then over those 2 years, they just kept expanding on it. And yeah, and this kid to this day, we still chat on the phone all the time. We're really close friends. And eventually our last couple shows, I found an insane guitarist and a really good bassist too. And we all played together. We would just do like covers and stuff. And those shows were always the most fun when you have like a full band up there. But our last show, it was like really emotional for me because I like started that music journey like from the ground up at that place. And then we left a legacy there. Like there's a huge stage there now. There's bands that play there all the time. And so that last show was really emotional for me. We would play like 4 or 5 hour shows just because. Um, yeah, I miss that so much. So next time I go down there, I'm for sure bringing my guitar. I'm
Got
probably
it.
going to try to, yeah, I'm going to play a show for sure.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fantastic, dude. That gives me chills, man. That's
yeah,
good, man.
it was really cool. I had an amazing experience doing that. That in itself made Grenada that much better for me because I met local people down there, and got to have that experience, and make lifelong friends through that experience. So
Remind everybody how old you are again right now.
I'm 29. Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
So you've already had all these life experiences that most
Yeah.
people will never have.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was because you continued to, you said you got rejected in your junior year. You had the injury, so you faced a lot of rejection, but you just kept going.
Yeah.
Like, where did that come from? That mindset to just keep, hey, doesn't matter. I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah. So that mindset comes from, I would say, my family, my mom and my dad. They're like the biggest inspirations in my life, and I know my dad how hard he worked, to be where he's at. I
Mhm.
mean, I remember when I was little. I mean, he was an apprentice for, um, a local funeral home and barely making anything. My mom was, a teacher, struggling like to put like food on the on the counter for me and my brother's brother and sister at the time. Brian was not there. Um, but I know how hard they worked. And my dad, he had like a landscaping company at the same time. He was doing this apprenticeship, and so I learned the definition of hard work from, I'd say, my parents, because I know how hard they had to work to get to where they're at. Um, and you know that mentality that if you do want something bad enough, you can always do it. And my dad always used to say, he's like, um, like whatever you do in life, give it 100%, and shoot for the stars, because if you do actually think it, you can do it. Like all these things, they sound so cliche, but it's just like it's 100% true. It is.
Yeah.
And I challenge anybody to that. And anybody who says it can't be done has at one point made that mantra their mantra. It can't be done, but it can be done.
Mhm.
So I would say that they are the biggest inspiration to me for sure.
That's so great to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. So tell everybody as we kind of come down the backstretch of this, where are you at now? Like, what are you doing now? And
Mhm.
what's the next thing?
Yeah. So right now I'm in emergency medicine residency, down in Tampa Bay, at Brandon Regional Hospital. It's a hospital like 15 minutes outside of downtown Tampa.
Mhm.
So it's pretty heavy ER volume. I think they see like 127,000 patients a year, something like that, which is a lot of patients. Um, and it's been crazy through the pandemic down here. We're still getting some pretty critically ill COVID patients, completely like blown out lungs and stuff. Their CAT scans look horrible. But so I'm living in downtown Tampa, love the area. Um, Man, Tampa's like a hidden gem. Like when you think of Florida, you think of like Miami or like Fort Lauderdale or all these other places. No one really thinks of Tampa. And this city is like up and coming, man. There's so much construction going on. Like Clearwater's 30 minutes away, St. Petersburg 30 minutes away. Um, so when I'm not in the hospital, working crazy hours, I'm trying to like explore. Um, and as everybody knows, Florida is a lot more open than the rest of the world, so there's more opportunity to, kind of have some normalcy down here. Um, but the hospital is it's nuts when I'm there. I I'm about 8 months into residency right now in my first year, and emergency medicine is we're the docs that work in the ER, and we're the jack of all trades. Like we have to know every type of medicine. because we have to know it emergently, right? So if somebody comes in, they're not breathing or whatever, CPR is being done. Like I had a code in my most recent shift yesterday or 2 days ago. Somebody comes in, the automatic CPR machine's going, I'm ready to intubate them. And, we're going through, advanced cardiac life support algorithm, all this stuff. Like that's what we do. We're masters of resuscitation. Like we try to bring you back, or if you're super sick, try to make you not so super sick before we send you off to the next doc, whether it's the intensivist or the hospitalist or, whatever. I love it. I love it. I'm really, really happy with the specialty I'm in. I think in any job, you're going to have bad days, and then you're going to have good days. I've had some shifts where I'm like, wow, that, you know, went amazingly. Like I had an amazing shift today. Then I'll have others when I'm like, wow, I felt like really behind today. I felt like I didn't really give it my all, or, I was, sloppy, these kind of things where fatigue wears down on you. And, it's tough. It's tough being in residency anywhere. And, but again, these are all, I think, mental roadblocks in my head that I need to get over. And that's something I've learned too, is that those mental roadblocks never stop. You no matter where you are in life, you're going to have doubts. But you just got to keep pushing past those boundaries and, reminding yourself that this is just another test. It's just another barrier for you to break down. So that's where I'm at right now. Residency, loving it. I have 2 more years after this year, and then I'll be hopefully a board certified emergency medicine physician. And then I have no idea where I'm going to practice. I mean, I love it down here, but obviously my family's back in New Jersey. I've thought about going back up north. But I mean, right now, like it's winter time. It's like 80 degrees. It's beautiful. I don't know if I'm coming back.
That sounds pretty awesome, man.
Yeah. So
I always like to ask this then, and it kind of plays into that. 5 years from now, you might not know where you're at, but what do you see for your life in 5 years?
yeah. So medicine's becoming more and more, especially emergency medicine, because it's shift work. So, you go in, you do your shift and you leave. You don't follow your patients. And that's nice. So you can have like a family, you can do things outside of medicine. So I'm trying to find like we call it a side hustle, something to do on the side, as well as be a doctor. So I see myself having some sort of side hustle as well as being a board certified emergency medicine physician somewhere. And I'd like to be involved in some leadership as well. I also have a podcast I've been working on with my buddy who's a neurosurgical resident, where we give advice to pre-medical students and medical students on like what they should be doing.
We'll have to put that in the show notes.
Yeah. It's called Res Life podcast, and it's on Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
And it's something, I think we only have like 11 or 12 episodes, but it's like, it's based on whatever topics are big right now. So like we did a COVID episode. My buddy, he was at Elmhurst during like the main COVID outbreak where it was just like insane. So we did an episode on that, comparing that to like Florida down here. We did an episode for pre-medical students just in general. We just started a series. It's called So You Want to Be. And the first one was So You Want to Be a Neurosurgeon. And I, talked to him about things that you have to do to get to that point. And then, emergency medicine physician. And then we're going to start interviewing our other buddies who are residents and in different specialties. So I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I'd like to expand on it in the next 5 years. I would like to have like a pretty big following. I think that'd be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I think it's unique. This is something my family, they were pushing me to do this because they're like, oh, you're starting to get a following on Instagram, and kids want to know this information because, most of these companies will be like, oh, you have to pay this fee to get advice, or, you have to do this to do that. And it's just like, I was once in their shoes and I had no idea what I was doing. I don't have any doctors in my family. I'm the first doctor in my family on either side. So I had no guidance. And a lot of these kids don't have guidance. And, it's like paying it forward, like each one teach one. And I'm a huge believer in that too. So I think the podcast is great for that reason. So that's one of my big projects. And another one is, I don't know, it's kind of silly, but I would like to produce, write and record an album, like professionally record one in the next 5 years. I think that would be
really about that, man. That's inspirational.
Yeah. So I want to do a few things over the next 5 years.
Dude, I mean, that's you're a shining example though for people. You're living.
Yeah, man.
You're living. You're doing it. It doesn't matter if it doesn't. What is this doctor doing recording it out? It doesn't make a difference. This is
exactly.
It doesn't make a difference. You're living, man, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. It's because you're right. It turns into one of those things like, oh, you're a doctor, just be a doctor. And it's like, no, this is my life. These are my interests. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do these things.
Dude, let me just plug this in. I can tell you, hold on one second.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inspiring for me to see, where you, how just everything you've been doing. Hold on here. Let me get that going. Everything you've done and everything you're going to continue to do, you're living, the road less traveled, man. And that's the way, people live great lives, such as yourself. Last one, and then I'll make sure we plug where people can find you and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
If you were to go back to when you were like 20 years old, what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now?
I would tell myself it'll be okay. It all works out. Because I think the biggest piece of advice I tell anybody who's around that age is life's not a linear path. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have so many things that come out of left field. And you're not promised tomorrow either. I learned that through my dad's business. I mean, he tells us every day, he's like, I could die tomorrow. You guys would have to continue to live your life. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice, that don't be bogged down by the normal path that you're supposed to take. Just do your thing. If you really want something bad enough, there's always a path to get there. It's just your individual path. Mm-hmm. And I learned that through, all these different things that I've done over the years. Yeah. And I'm glad I did those things because they helped me mature as an adult, and put things into perspective. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would tell myself.
Excellent, man. There's a lot of wisdom in that. For sure. Very, very cool, man. Chris, where can people, what's the best way for people to follow you? Is it, and I'll put this all in the show notes, subscribing to the podcast, subscribing to you on Instagram or following you on Instagram? What's the best way? Yeah,
I would say Instagram, at Doc Reilles. So DocReilles. And then Res Life Podcast is on Apple Podcasts. I'm working on, putting more stuff on YouTube. It's just tough, with the hours we work. So it's like, you come home and then you got to edit the videos and all this stuff. And so I'm trying to get better at it. So it's difficult, but yeah, you can check me out on YouTube too. It's Dr. Chris Reilly. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, the Instagram one is where, if you DM me or whatever, if you have any questions about, the medical field getting involved, or like, you're pre-medicine or a medical student and you want advice on something, like I have kids constantly going in my DMs asking me questions and stuff, and I'll respond. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Excellent, man. And people, they got to be sure to follow you, because I'm sure the next part of your journey is going to be just as interesting as the first part, up to this point. which
Yeah.
is, I've seen it for the past 10 years, and like it's inspirational. So people are looking to tap into inspiration. I think you're the guy to follow, man. So good
Well,
job, dude.
thanks, Kyle. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me
Yeah.
just bring this.